Chapter 22. The Crystal. Each turn of the staircase deepened the burn in Kai's calves, and every labored breath carried them closer to whatever waited at the top of the Black Sentinel. The stairs coiled up without end, though the rotunda where they had first confronted Velthera turns ago couldn't be far now. The stairs finally gave way to a long corridor. Eira checked for traps and found none. Nothing stirred in the myriad alcoves that lined the long passage. The only sound was their footsteps against the marble, and, beneath it, a distant rumble. Korik's cannon. The barrages echoed up through the tower's bones, muffled and relentless, drawing all the creatures out of the tower and into the clearing below. Korik and Raven played their part well. Kai and Eira entered the rotunda with their weapons at the ready, bracing for an ambush that never came. Velthera stood before the ebon crystal, watching them arrive as if they were expected guests, though she radiated a darkness that drank the light from the air, and her jet-black hair drifted behind her as if suspended in water. In one hand, she held a long obsidian trident, its crown set with a gemstone that might have been an amethyst, or the same corrupted proselyum as the ebon crystal. Her other hand hung loose at her side, fingers moving in small gestures. Kai noticed only because the rest of her stood so utterly still. "I can see you weaving," Kai said. "Put aside your magic." Velthera broke into a smile. "Watch your tongue, boy." Nycurus's voice cut sharp from the right. Kai hadn't noticed her until she spoke. He turned, and her eyes caught what little light the chamber held, fixed on him the way a cat fixes on small prey. She started prowling back and forth, and every few steps her hand flicked through the air, scrawling runes that hung suspended, layering into something Kai couldn't decipher. Whatever it was, it made his skin crawl. "No, Nycurus, it's all right. The boy is astute." Velthera fixed her crimson eyes on Kai's as he turned back to her. He could feel her gaze like hands curling slowly around his throat. "Enough games," Eira said. "This is no game, is it, Kai?" Velthera's attention never left him, as though the words Eira had spoken came from no one at all. Rune runners don't play with a claim as serious as this. "You are a rune runner, are you not?" "I am." "Good." "Rune runners are many things, Kai." She stepped closer. "But what I value most is this. You are seekers of lost treasures. And you are exceptional traders." "What's your point?" Velthera's smile widened. "My point is simple. Let's put aside this nonsensical violence. Let's make a trade." Kai scoffed. "There's nothing you have that I want." Velthera hung her head in mock disappointment. "Oh, I disagree. I think I have everything you want, Kai." "What do you mean?" She gestured toward the ebon crystal towering behind her. Kai's gaze flicked to it. The lattice inside rose and fell in luminance, casting an eerie glow across the rotunda. "Do you know what this represents?" "Yes, death," Eira said quickly. Velthera inclined her head, as though a pupil had answered well. "Good, good. You know." She turned away from them, arms outstretched toward the crystal. "This is the death of the ninefold fracture. Isn't that what you want?" "What?" Kai's grip around the dagger tightened. "Kolsheda has lived long enough," Velthera continued, her voice dropping lower and colder. "She's done enough damage, caused enough pain." Her fingers curled. "And now I have the means to end it, to put everything out of its misery." She turned back to face them, eyes glowing brightly. "The Nightshawl, spread across all Dynetta. Eternal darkness. Her smile thinned to a razor's edge. All souls captured in time and bound to the Nightshawl like us, the Myr'ides, bound to me. You're insane, he breathed. Am I? Is the Nightshawl really so terrible, Kai? Yes! Her lips twisted into a cruel pout, playful now, as though the argument amused her. My. You grew up here, didn't you? This is your home. You hide in it. You thrive in it. She let the silence stretch. Hasn't it given you all the tools to evade the things that would tear you apart in the light? Kai spaced each word. The Nightshawl is a plague. Is it? Velthera tilted her head, squinting. Or is it simply misunderstood? She gestured around the rotunda. Think, Kai. If the Nightshawl were absolute, there'd be no more desperate fights. No more watching the people you love bleed and die for a world that's already broken. I'm offering you peace. True peace. An end to the mortal suffering you've endured your entire life. It's what Colchetta wanted for us, but never had the capacity to understand herself. But I understand. Suffering is part of being alive, mortal or not. You can't just erase it. Unless you're planning to murder everyone. I'm not a monster, Kai. Velthera pressed a hand to her chest and arched back, as though the accusation wounded her. A soft scoff followed. I wouldn't kill everyone, but they won't live as they do now either. I shall be their anchor, like I am for my coven. Kai exhaled hard through his nose. That's still death. I'm willing to be reasonable with you. She took another step, raising a finger as if sharing a secret. You don't have to live that way if you don't want to. None of your friends do. Your mother, Korik, Raven, they could all be part of this just as they are now. After everything you've all endured. Her voice sank to barely a whisper. Don't you deserve that? Kai's muscles coiled tight beneath his skin. The words had found something buried in him, something he'd been shoving down since the moment he wove his first incantation. They sounded like a permission to stop fighting. His mother would sleep soundly, and Korik could rest with no watch left to stand, and no one he loved would bleed for a broken world again, and part of him ached to say yes. But the ache had a strange texture that was smooth and foreign against his consciousness. He paused in recognition, having felt this once before, on the long walk to the Sentinel's gates, when a wanting he couldn't explain drew him toward the witches as though the choice were his own. It had felt just like this, certain, in all the wrong places. Velthera's voice had wound around him like silk, drawing tighter with every syllable. It had been spun for him, and he felt its pull clearly now. He drew a slow breath, and the silk loosened. Kai, please give me the crystal. At the core of Velthera's request hid a directive woven in magic, and it dragged at him like an undertow. He wanted to raise his arm, offering the relic to her, and Kai fought against it, keeping the dagger at his side. No, he said. Velthera's smirk vanished. Very well, boy. Her gaze slid to Eira. Eira. Her voice turned silken again, coaxing. My darling girl, show Kai what it means to be reasonable. She stepped forward, the trident tilting in her hand. Release the crystal, and I will give you what you've always wanted. A family. All the power that Zorith and Dolindra possessed could be yours. Join me. Complete our purpose. Her stare settled on Eira with the patience of someone unpicking a seam, hunting for the one thread that would give. Watching it made the back of Kai's neck prickle. You need only let go. Let go of this misguided crusade and step into your rightful place as my one true daughter. Don't listen to her, Kai pleaded, but the magic made it fall on deaf ears. I want... Eira looked down. Relieve Kai of the crystal. A third utterance, and Kai felt each repetition settle like another thread laid onto the weave of her spell. Eira turned slowly, her gaze finding Kai. Her hand moved slowly to her scabbard. She unstrapped the hilt, and the blade slid free into her hand. Eira? His voice came out tight. Panic gripped him. She stepped toward him. Shadow pooled in the hollows of her eyes, and her pupils were blown wide and dark. You're right, dead mother. Her words drifted, as though carried from somewhere far away. It's time to let go. I've been denying who I am for too long. Shaped as a weapon, trained to kill. I tried to pretend I was something else, but... She lifted the blade toward Kai. I know what I am. I'm what they call a witch. Velthera's smile widened. Good. You're seeing reason. I see what I've been missing. Eira's gaze held on Kai. Family. A mother. A place I belong. She paused. And I have you to thank for that. And now I'm where I belong. Right here. Kai's throat closed. Oh, gods, no. No, not like this. And here's where it ends, she said. It's time to stop running, Kai. Something in him refused to believe it, and the rest of him refused to move. Every instinct howled at him to raise the dagger, yet his arm hung dead at his side because it was Eira. Because after everything they had crossed together, his body would not learn her as an enemy in the space of a single breath. Then, Eira pivoted. The shield she had woven from Prismir came up to guard her center. Her sword arm drew back with the blade angled low, and she sank into a fighter's crouch, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Every line of her aimed directly at Velthera. Canaith velocis memdar, she intoned. The air buckled as the words left Eira's lips. Pressure ripped outward with each syllable, like the shimmer of heat rising off stone, warping the rotunda before it snapped back to clarity. The compulsion tore loose. Every thread Velthera had wound through her coaxing, every rune Nycurus had scrawled into the dark, unraveled in the same breath. Air rushed into Kai as though he had broken the surface of water. He hadn't known he was drowning until the burden of it released him. Kai hadn't known this incantation in the old tongue, but its meaning was simple enough. He had whispered the words enough times throughout his life to recognize them. Darkness can't hold us. He swallowed hard. I thought you were going to... That I thought I was done for. I'm sorry, Kai. Eira kept her eyes on Velthera. I had to let her dark magic work its way into me. The dispel takes time. Cunning. Velthera's composure held a moment longer, then her expression darkened and her grip tightened on the trident. If you will not see reason, then you've written your epitaph. Then she moved. The trident swept up, and a volley of corrupted Prismir burst from its prongs, orbs of it warping mid-flight as they streaked across the rotunda. The first of them came shrieking toward Kai. Eira was faster. She stepped into its path, shield raised, and the orb burst against it in a bloom of shadow that rocked her back half a step before she planted her feet. Work the crystal, she said over her shoulder. Can't hold them long. Kai closed his eyes and cast his senses inward, searching for his Illyr. The place where your spirit exists everywhere and nowhere at all. Myr'ides had told him. Outside physical space, that is where the crystal has anchored itself. He found it, narrowing onto a single point of focus behind the center of his forehead. He raised the dagger's hilt to it and let go, allowing the blade to draw from him. Prismir erupted from the blade, a lance of molten light that crossed the rotunda in a heartbeat and slammed into the ebon crystal. For a breath, the crystal drank it in. Then the lattice twisted, and the corrupted essence slashed back. The clash of opposing forces tore through the chamber, deafening, churning the air like a storm sealed indoors. Eira! The siphon burned through Kai's muscles. I'll need time. There was no answer. He risked a glance. She was already trading blows with both witches. Nycurus' strike hammered her magic shield and drove her arm low, and Eira turned away with it, and what looked like a retreat became a pivot. Her short sword swept backward in a tight arc, riding the momentum of her spin, and Nycurus leapt clear as the cut sliced through the air where her ribs had been. The pivot spent her stance. Velthera closed in before Eira could reset, and the trident's downward slash met her sword, prongs grating along the blade. The force of it sent her staggering, and Nycurus was on her again before she found her footing. Gods, they were wearing her down. Kai could only spare her glimpses. The siphon demanded all of him, and the fight reached him in slivers between one surge and the next. A dagger flashed at Eira's ribs. She twisted, and a dark line opened along her side. The beam thinned as his focus lurched toward her, and he hauled it back into line. She was bleeding for the time he needed. He forced more of himself into the crystal. The witches folded around her, Velthera's trident plunging from above, while the whip cracked in low and wrenched her boot from under her. Kai lost the exchange in a flare of Prismir, and when his vision cleared, the crystal had begun to give. He felt it before he saw it, a shudder running back up the beam and into his arms. Hairline fractures crept across the darkened surface, each fissure weeping raw magic, and a piercing whine climbed through the rotunda. Stop him! Velthera's command cut through the din, and both witches surged toward him. Eira bolted after them. She hit Velthera from behind hard enough to drive them both to the stone, and rolled free as the Den Mother snarled. Nycurus came in low. Eira dropped with her, swept her legs away, and took her down in a tangle of limbs. Steel glinted between them. When Eira vaulted clear, her heel drove into the witch's face, and the crack of bone carried across the chamber. Her sword arm was dark to the elbow. Velthera was already up and closing on him. Eira tore herself away from Nycurus and sprinted, and Kai saw the point of her sword burst from the Den Mother's chest before he understood what he was watching. Velthera howled. The backhand that followed flung Eira across the rotunda, and everything in him strained to break off, to reach her where she skidded over the marble. But he remained on the crystal. The beam was the only help he had left to give her. Velthera turned her back on him, Eira's sword still standing in her body, and advanced to where she lay. Insolent wretch, she growled. Then Nycurus was on him. She snatched her dagger from the floor mid-strike and lunged, and Kai twisted in the last instant, the blade shaving past his throat. She was already turning, momentum feeding the next strike. The beam guttered. He planted his feet and gave the crystal everything that remained. The world folded inward, his consciousness frayed at its edges as the force poured through him, more than his body was ever meant to carry, searing every vein it crossed. Somewhere past the light, the ring sharpened beyond hearing, and within the lattice, radiance and shadow devoured each other, collapsing toward a single point. The ebon crystal detonated. Incandescent force erupted from the crystal's heart. Raw prismir ripped through the top of the tower, and the shockwave slammed into Kai's chest, driving the air from his lungs. Stone fractured beneath him. The walls groaned, and the tower's foundation convulsed. Debris turned to shrapnel. Crystal shards streaked through the air, and the light seared through his eyelids even after he squeezed them shut. He cried out, but the sound vanished into the shattering stone and the long final scream of the corrupted Prismir being unmade. The blast hurled him backward. He tumbled across broken stone until he slammed into something solid, and pain burst through his shoulder. The crystal burned in his grasp like molten iron, searing his palm, but he couldn't let go. His ears rang. His vision swam with white and shadow. He forced his eyes open. Through the haze of dust and fading light, he found only absence. Where the ebon crystal had loomed, a smoking crater opened into the level below, and residual magic still arced across the ruin. The siphon was destroyed. It should have landed like victory. Kai searched himself for it, and found only the hollow the power had left behind, scraped clean from ribs to fingertips. And beneath the ringing in his ears, one thought kept turning over. Where is she? He found Eira across the chamber, half buried in a drift of rubble and crystal fragments, pushing herself upright on her shield arm, while the other hung dark past the elbow. Blood streamed into the debris. She was hurt, but alive. He tried to call out and produced nothing his own ears could find. Velthera, too, rose from the wreckage. She regarded the sword still standing in her body. She closed one hand around the blade and drew it out the way any other person might extract a pen from its inkwell, its whole length stained red with her blood. She let it fall without a glance at where it landed. The wound did nothing to slow her. If anything, whatever moved beneath her skin seemed to feed on it. Then, her scream tore through the chamber. Violet-hued power crackled over her, the runes along her trident's haft blazing, and her face twisted into something cruel and angry that no longer pretended to be anything resembling humanity. She surged toward him. The trident filled his vision, prongs falling toward his face. Kai couldn't move. The tines descended, and he understood, with terrible clarity, that he had nothing left to meet them. He never saw Eira take up her sword. She was simply there, the blade already crossed against the trident inches from his face, close enough that the air of it brushed his skin. Sparks burst between the weapons. She stood over him, a wall between him and the prongs, every muscle trembling with the effort of holding Velthera back. Her eyes found his for an instant. She'd saved him. Again. "You will not touch him," Eira snarled. "You dare?" The silk had burned out of Velthera's voice, and what remained was older and uglier. She bore down, and the crossed weapons shuddered between them. "I chose you. Of every foundling the Coven has ever pulled from the dark, I raised you to stand at my right hand. I would have given you eternity." "You stole me." Eira's boots ground for purchase on the broken floor. "Children don't choose." Kai willed his legs to move, and they lay like felled timber. He reached for the crystal's heat and found embers burned down past use. He had spent all of it on the ebon crystal, which now lay in shattered ruins around them. His only hope was Eira. Everything she had was aimed at the witch in front of her, her focus total, spent to the last measure. And that was how he saw what she couldn't. Nycurus came out of the shadows behind her, blood sheeting down her face from where Eira's heel had landed. The obsidian dagger was held low in her hand. "Watch out!" The words tore from his throat. Eira's eyes never left Velthera. She answered the warning with the only motion she could spare, a half-turn of her head that never finished. The dagger slid between Eira's ribs. She sighed. It was such a small sound. Quiet. Almost gentle, as though she had remembered something she'd forgotten, or had caught herself in a simple mistake. Her sword arm faltered. The blade slipped from her fingers and rang against the stone. Then, her knees buckled, and she fell.